Welcome to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. I'm your host, Caroline Marshall, and today I'm welcoming Kat. Kat is a Surrey-based mummy to two and founder of Lesh. Kat started her business with one goal in mind: to help breastfeeding mums who experience leaking to breastfeed with dignity and give them one less thing to think about in the minefield of motherhood. Lesh, the nursing bra revolution, will be launching in Q1 2024. Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for coming today.
Hi, Caroline. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm so pleased to have you on this podcast because it's so exciting I think you're the first person we're having on who's like in that business stage of about to launch. And I think it's so important to share these stories at the time. And then maybe in a couple of years, we can share your success story at the same time. No, it's a real pleasure to have you on. And what I really like, how I like to start these is to get started is that find out a bit about your background and what you did as a career first, and the person behind the business, and your motherhood journey so far.
Yeah, for sure. So my background is mainly within the beauty sector, so in marketing. So I've been working in the beauty sector for large FMCG beauty companies for well over a decade. And that's kind of all I've really known. But something that I loved within the sector is when I was working for global brands, where I was able to be very strategic, and really come up with new ideas, think outside the box, and really kind of display those more entrepreneurial facets of myself. And I've been working in the beauty industry for such a long time. And I think I worked with many different big corporations over that time. And I just think as time has gone by, I've really realized how much that the kind of corporate lifestyle just wasn't really for me. I found myself kind of consistently struggling to get ahead, really kind of not having that ideal corporate mindset, if you will. So I'm the type of person who will always stick up for what I believe is right, whether or not it's the most popular decision. And sometimes that can get you into a bit of hot water in a corporate environment. So what I started to see is a pattern emerging where maybe this corporate lifestyle just wasn't the right fit for myself. And the more I thought about it, I did think, maybe what I need to be doing is something on my own, which led me to Lesh, really. Throughout COVID, in 2020, obviously life changed for everyone, didn't it? And whilst I was really passionate about beauty and the beauty industry, when it got to COVID and we all started staying inside, I just kind of lost that desire and passion for makeup. I pretty much stopped wearing it. I think like a lot of people did. And during that time, I got pregnant. And as many mums will agree, once you become a mum, your life just changes so dramatically. And the things that you were once so passionate about, it just changes for you. So for me, pretty much, overnight during that period, I just kind of lost my love and fell out of love with the cosmetic industry. And I just thought there was going to be a better fit for me by potentially, working for myself or working in a different industry, however that may look.
So you kind of decided to go it alone before you even had the idea for Lesh yet? Is that?
It had always dawned on me, like when I was younger, I remember having these like really vivid ideas of this, what I thought to be like a really great idea. I remember once I was, shopping in the grocery store for toothpaste thinking, God, what a boring experience. I was like, if only there is like a challenger brand for toothpaste. I mean, totally random, but, at that time, I just didn't know how to get started on that. And I was just like, I left it there as an idea. But I would find myself having these repeat patterns of, these little ideas kind of coming into my head and really kind of like sparking this fire and making me really excited. But then reality would set in and they kind of go away. But it was at this point, during my maternity leave when I had the idea for Lesh, and that vision and that passion just never kind of dulled or died away. So it's something that I continued with.
I love that. It's so true though. All those little ideas that, realistically aren't going to come to anything are all the things that start planting that seeds for when the good idea comes along and the one
Yeah.
that has legs and that you should grow and build. I think I really believe that and can really relate to just being someone who always has these little ideas and like, oh no, I'll leave that one. This one might be something kind of thing. So 2020. So when did you have your first child then?
So Felix was born in May 2021.
Oh, fantastic. So a little bit post-COVID, but you still had that COVID pregnancy experience. How did that feel?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it was interesting because I had kind of two COVID pregnancy moments. So, I actually had a miscarriage on the very first day of lockdown,
Oh
which was
gosh.
an interesting experience. Something that people weren't really talking about at that time. So that was, I mean, it was a difficult moment. And I think it was mostly so difficult because I didn't know how common it was at the time. Like I just didn't know that people had miscarriages. It didn't even occur to me that was a thing. So I had the miscarriage. And that happened after I told my work that I was pregnant, which was interesting as well. I didn't realize at the time, but you are only legally protected for 2 weeks after having a miscarriage in your workplace. So when I told my work, they were, of course, like really, really sympathetic and understanding. But you've all of a sudden told your business, like, I'm planning to start a family, and
Yeah.
they know that that's looming over your head, and that's what you decide to do. So I had that first little experience having that miscarriage. And I was fortunate enough to get pregnant about 6 months later with my son Felix. And that whole experience was really difficult. I find it so fascinating that so many women experience pregnancy so completely different from one another. And
Yeah.
I had no idea how bad it was going to be for me. I remember hearing about Princess Kate having HG, and that it was kind of a rare form of morning sickness. Unfortunately, that's what I ended up having.
Oh gosh.
And the term morning sickness seems so nothing. And when you see it in movies,
Oh, it's
someone
funny in
throws up.
movies, isn't
It's
it?
Yeah, it's all funny. They just have a little
Yeah.
throw up and it's back to normal life, but it's not. It's
Mm.
completely all consuming. And it's not just a sickness, it's your hormones, everything. It can just change who you are as a person. It can change how you react to the most normal situations. It can change how you and your partner get along.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and
definitely.
yeah, and for me, it was really like being a prisoner inside my own body. So I really, really struggled with that. Um, and I've just recently had another baby, outside of COVID. So a completely different experience. So, while COVID was a scary, crazy, weird time, it was possibly the best time to be pregnant because everything was cocooned, you were shielded, there was no germs, like you
Yeah.
couldn't go out and do things, there was no pressure.
No
Um,
FOMO as like, yeah.
yeah,
It's
exactly. You just you could just sit inside and, look after yourself basically and work from home. Whereas with my daughter Lily, pregnancy, life had gone back to normal. And I actually found the stress and the strain of that so much harder than the first time round.
Did you have HG with Lily as
I
well?
did, but what I had done this time is really educate myself a lot more on HG and understand what I could do to make it better for myself. So with Felix, I was prescribed some medication, didn't work. I just said, oh, well, it doesn't work. There's an amazing website, can't remember the name of it, but it's basically a HG support site, which
Oh,
explains to
fantastic.
you the stages that you can get support in terms of medicine with HG. So I think there's something like 3 different stages. So they'll start you off on kind of the least, what they can what they say is risky medicine. And then if that doesn't work, then you step up, and then you can step up again based on what your symptoms are. So I knew about this and I educated myself. So I knew that I could get more help this time around. And whilst I ended up on a medication that took the edge off, it never totally takes the HG away. So it definitely was a help, and I felt a lot more in control. And I knew that this was going to end. But what kept me really positive and going through my second pregnancy was just knowing what comes out at the end of it. So that, you know, the bond you have with your baby, and, you know, all the lovely things that are ahead. But then at the same time, you're also terrified because you know of what's ahead as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
second time around is just a totally different ball game. And I just expected it to be rinse and repeat.
Yeah, oh, it's so true. No matter what your experience, it's always different to the first one, and it makes sense because we're all different people, right? And thank you so much for sharing, because someone close to me had HG throughout. Actually, two family members had HG throughout their pregnancy, and it's just seems all consuming. And I know something I'm quite passionate about, we've spoken about briefly, is like it really must impact your prenatal mental health as well, which I feel there's still a lot of, don't know about you, I feel there's a lot of stigma still attached to that, because it's like we should be grateful we're pregnant, and we can't share how hard it is for some people. It's not for everyone, but it can be a real tough journey, pregnancy.
Oh, 100%. And for me, really, really difficult. I think there's a lot of awareness of postnatal depression,
Yeah.
baby blues. You know, that's communicated a lot within, you know, NCT, and people know about it. But something I experienced, which I didn't even know was a thing, was the perinatal. During the entire perinatal period, you can have depression. So from the second you get pregnant, you know, and all your hormones are going wild, you can have depression from the get-go. And I probably experienced this in my first pregnancy, but I just wasn't aware because I was so consumed with how ill I was, and the fact that I didn't have these other social pressures. So it didn't make the depression seem quite as obvious, and kind of think, oh, well, it's COVID and it's a depressing time anyway.
Mm.
Um,
And I
but
think we're talking a lot more about mental health then, I guess, whereas like, yeah,
yes,
previous to that, like it was like,
yeah.
oh, mental health, oh no.
Oh, definitely. And I think with my first pregnancy, and you know, like pregnancies are like snowflakes, aren't they? Like no two are the same. So with Felix, my firstborn, you know, I was so lucky with when I gave birth to him, you know, I didn't experience baby blues. I had that rush of love, all the things, you know, the all
Oh,
singing, all dancing experience and
yeah.
connection I had with him. But when Lily was born, that wasn't there. And that
Mm,
was so upsetting for me. Like,
yeah.
I spent my whole second pregnancy gearing up for this magical moment, setting my expectations super, super high. And just to be like, oh my gosh, I don't feel these things. I don't feel that strong connection. I don't feel that bond right away. Oh no, what if it never comes? And that kind of added to this depression that I had. And I, you know, I had an amazing team around me in terms of NHS. Honestly, like I could not fault the services that I have had, and the support I've had through the midwife team. um but something that I was constantly asked if I wanted was, you know, a medication to help with it. And because I was so optimistic about how I would feel when Lily had got here, I was like, nope, once the baby comes, I won't need anything. I'll be fine. It's just because I'm pregnant. And once the pregnancy's over, I'll be fine. But that wasn't the case. So I said to myself, you know, 6 weeks post giving birth, you know, post my C-section surgery, if I'm still struggling, then I'm going to seek the help. So that's what I did. You know, at 6 weeks postpartum, I still felt like I wasn't myself. And I decided to, you know, get some medication to help me with that. And I was prescribed sertraline, which is something I had actually been prescribed before in the past. And it comes with some really difficult side effects, initially, really difficult ones. Um, but it's something you have to push through. And I'm pleased to say that, you know, once you really push through it and give it the time it needs to set in, it has really helped things. But at the same time, there are some side effects which do make, you know, working as a mum with a newborn really challenging. So it impacts your focus, your concentration. I will find like I have periods of time where I completely forget everything. And, you know, sometimes you're like, is that my baby brain? Is that the
Yeah.
medication? Or is it just like, oh,
It's
you
harder
know,
to know
mix of the
which, I can
two?
imagine.
Yeah.
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 So that just adds, you know, another layer of complexity and challenge on top of, you know, trying to start your own business with a newborn at home.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, thank you so much for sharing. And it's so true. I've heard that a lot through friends. Now, I've had two myself, and that experience of one you have, and it may not be your first, it might be your second, but one baby, you get all that hormone rush and joy, and the other you don't. And I feel like that's so important to raise, because I think if you're lucky enough to get it the first time, you really do assume, oh, that's how I have babies, and it will be like that the second time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and and prenatal mental health as well. I think it's so important to share our stories and to share that you can get help and how to get it and what possibilities there are out there. So thank you so much. And now I'd love to share a little bit and find out. So how did you actually come up with the idea for Lesh? What was your personal journey with breastfeeding? Because obviously you've got to have a great story in order to have just thought of this amazing product.
Yeah, for sure. So let me start off by saying, you know, I've never been like the most maternal person. I've always found motherhood like to be quite daunting. So when I was talking earlier about kind of setting expectations, I think I had such a low expectation for myself. You know, all I had heard from other women is how challenging breastfeeding was, how, you know, my mastitis is the most painful thing in the world. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, like I've got HG. I'm not like taking to this whole pregnancy and motherhood thing very well. So I'm probably going to struggle with this as well. You know, it's all very negative, but that's just the way my brain was working.
Oh, I can hard
Um,
relate to that. I really struggled in my first pregnancy. So I was like, This is going to be awful when I have a child." And it was actually
100%.
better.
Exactly. So I had like the formula ready to go and everything. And, you know, like I always looked at women breastfeeding and it just, uh, I'm ashamed to say it, but I really was like, oh, it's a bit icky. I'm not sure about it. Like, oh no. So I was never initially one of those people who's like, yes, I'm going to breastfeed all the benefits. You know, I was very much like, it's probably not going to work for me, but let's give it a go. And in my time running up to giving birth, I had some time off and I actually took a free course with a company called Blossom. And it was a free, just a free breastfeeding kind of seminar. And it was the first time I had heard this really positive narrative around breastfeeding. And the lady who ran the course was just talking about all this oxytocin that it released and can help bond with the baby. And I thought, oh, you know, my biggest fear is like having postnatal depression, you know, having this baby and being like, it's not mine. And, you know, I was terrified of that. So I thought, oh my gosh, well, if this can help with that, you know, she actually made it sound pretty good. I was like, you know, give it a go. Of course I will. And the second I had Felix and, you know, just that hugely overwhelming experience when you have a C-section and there's a human being pulled from your body, which is just incredible. You know, he was placed on my tummy and he did the breast crawl. And it was just the most euphoric, incredible feeling when he latched onto me for the first time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm breastfeeding. This is insane. And I was just hooked. I was just in love with it, with him and everything. And I was just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna smash these, you know, these these stats, you know, where women, you know, it's 9 out of 10 women who stop breastfeeding before they want to, at 6 weeks. So it's I was like, you know, hearing all these statistics, which I heard from NCT as well, I was like, you know, I'm going to do this. I'm going to smash these statistics. I'm going to breastfeed longer and da da da. And I was just really hell bent on doing it. You know, and I was so fortunate that I've always had a massive supply of milk. My milk came in quickly. As I said with Felix, you know, I didn't get the baby blues when my milk came in. Everything was just happy, lovely. Don't get me wrong, breastfeeding initially was extremely painful, but I was just absolutely driven to make it work. And I was lucky enough to be able to breastfeed Felix for 11 months. But I suffered with one key thing, and that's that I leaked like all the time, day and night, and nothing prepared me for this. I took NCT, and there was nothing that mentioned that, I could be literally leaking liquid from my breasts for the best part of a full year.
Yeah.
Everything I read said that it should regulate by 10 weeks, which in itself is a long time to be leaking, but it just never did. It just kept going and going and going. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, is it just me? Is this like a really weird thing that I've got? I did the research and I looked online, and I could see that there were loads of people who had the exact same problem that I did. And I was looking at it and being like, well, what are they suggesting? What are people doing? And I just couldn't believe the things that people were resorting to. So women were sleeping on towels, women were sleeping with muslins down their bras. Like, in a really extreme case, someone said they slept with nappies on the bed. Like, I was like, what is this? Like, it sounds like some sort of like 1940s cure for when women had their periods.
Yeah, no, exactly that.
None of this is a suitable solution. And there's only really three things on the market. So it's either, reusable breast pads, which me, I would soak through them in a matter of minutes, and then that's done, so I was like, well, that's not going to work. There are breast shells, which do catch the milk, but you can't leave them in for any long period of time. You can't sleep in them.
Yeah, not comfy for sleeping. I had some of those.
What am I going to do when I'm out in public and I've got this cup of milk? Like, how am I going to juggle that? And so it just meant that the only option I had was disposables, and I was going through these disposables at an alarming rate, and they're big and bulky and they create a huge amount of waste. So that was the first thing, being like, oh my God, I'm creating all this waste. And really, there's a list as long as my arm as to why I just hated wearing them. Like, they're just so awkward. Like, they move around, they bunch up. You can see them, you can smell them. If you're breastfeeding in public, you got to take them out. And like, how unhygienic and awkward is it to be, sat with
on the table,
coffee? Yeah. And you always kind of try and put it somewhere discreet. And then when you're done feeding, you try and find where you put it. And you're like, oh God, I can't find it now. I mean, I think my husband even woke up one morning with one stuck to his face. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, the amount of issues that I have with these. And I was like, there's got to be a better solution than this. There just has to be. And I was like, it was just owning my life and impacting my self-esteem. So that's really when the idea for Lesh was born. I was like, I just want to be able to put on a bra, not put any pads in, just, let happen what's going to happen, let the leakage happen, and then throw my bra in the wash at the end of the day and just never have to think about breast pads again. So really, that's where the idea for Lesh came from. And that's basically it in a nutshell. It's a bra that absorbs and captures your leaks. It's reusable, and you chuck it in the wash at the end of the day, and you're good to go as soon as it dries.
And it works. I love you're talking about, you going out to breastfeed and all of this, because it literally showcases one small piece of the like getting out the house as a mum and and all the things. Like, this is just literally one piece you ran through of what's going through our head, because obviously you would have also been watching a baby who also needs its nappy changed and trying to function as a human. And I think that was just such a good example of like one problem you were having, which you've found a solution for, but that we all go through at this. And so Lesh is yet to launch yet, but I love, what I want to really share is like your journey, because there'll be people listening to this who have an idea and it's like, where do I physically start this business? And I think it's so important to answer that, because I think we can forget this if we're talking to someone who's like 4 years into their journey and got several products. So tell us like the real early stage stuff. How did you go from concept to actually doing?
For sure. So, I mean, maternity leave is the perfect time to be able to do that. So I think, like I was talking about the toothpaste example earlier, I was in full-time employment, so you just don't have the headspace for it. So maternity leave is just like the perfect time if you've got an idea to just, make that decision and go with it. I mean, this time around on maternity leave, I'm not watching as much Netflix as I was the first time, but there's always something else you could be doing with your time. So if you've got a good idea, why not just kind of crack on and at least get the early stages going? So I'm the type of person who has always wanted to have kind of a step-by-step process for everything. It is overwhelming when you've got an idea and you're like, oh my God, how do I launch this? And
Yeah.
whilst I had been exposed to product development by working, in marketing for big brands, I didn't actually know how to go about it. So I think, to be honest, the early stages was really me Googling, like, how do I launch a brand? And what I did know is that, manufacturing in the Far East was going to be a lot cheaper, and more affordable, which, is obviously something that plays on your minds when you're in maternity leave and getting, paid barely anything. So budget comes into it. And I discovered a platform called China Importal. And it was this, well, it's still around, but it's this great tool that basically breaks down the product development cycle for you and the process, especially if you're dealing with factories in China. So it gives you kind of every step. It's project management tool. So you go through each of them, tick them off, and you work with the team there. They allow you kind of like 5 questions you can ask them. But outside of that, everything is there that you need, all the templates, all the process. I mean, not everything is entirely suitable, but it gives you kind of the bare bones and the process, and it gives you tips to kind of protect yourself. Like, don't put a deposit down without this, or here's the agreement you need to sign with the factory to make sure that they do it, and so you're protected if anything goes wrong, and all those kind of safeguarding practices are in there, which, if you're someone like me who's learned to be rather risk averse, due to the kind of companies you worked with before, having that kind of guideline really helps set you off on the right path. So I think if I hadn't signed up to China Portal and used that, I don't know if I would have moved along as quick as I had. Mainly, what it really does help you to do is approach the factories in the right way, because I had done it before when I've had ideas and just never had a response back, or I struggled with the communication. But by asking the factories in the right way with the right information that they need, then they know that you're serious, and you're more likely to get a response and be able to move things along. So that was pivotal for me in the early stages.
Oh, I've never heard of it. So China Importal, did you say?
Yes, it's called China Importal.
That's great, because like sometimes these little snippets, you never know, that's just going to help someone actually be like, right, I can do this. And then, yeah, like you said, not have those blockers that you've clearly experienced before. And like, I've never heard of it. So it's thank you for sharing that. And so let's talk about finances, because, I'm doing a lot of work on financial wellness myself. And I know people ultimately actually also want to know is, how on earth, like, will I get the money? But reality is, what money do I need to start this? So I think people know, like, how did you approach budgeting and funding for your business?
Yeah, well, I guess the benefit of my background is that I used to manage a brand budget. So I understand all the things that would need to go into it. But obviously I'm not paying, 50 grand for a photo shoot
Yeah.
anymore. So I think for me, um, what I also didn't know was the amount of grants funding, VC funding, angel funding, all that stuff. I didn't know that was a thing. I just thought everyone who appeared on Dragon's Den was, remortgaging their homes and taking out their own cash to do these things. So I think that's why Lesh appealed to me so much, because it was a consumer good. I could work on a low minimum order quantity, and even if I couldn't sell one, it was not going to bankrupt us. And I'm not going to lie, I am in a position of privilege because my husband has been hugely supportive of me doing this. It's come at the cost of me having a full-time job. I do think it can still be done on the side, for people who are still working, but for me, I couldn't find a part-time job. Like, finding a part-time job in marketing is really challenging. And I think in an ideal world, I would be doing both, but that just hasn't been an option for me, unfortunately. But my goal with Lesh was always to keep the costs down and spend the money where it kind of needs to be spent. And from having worked on photo shoots in the past, I know that the most important thing really in a photo shoot is the model. I've done a lot of shoots with models who are amazing. I've done a lot of photo shoots with models that are okay. Um, and I always find that the models that are amazing always sell the product really well. So I knew that was where I wanted to spend a lot of the money that I had. I got a little bit of a payout for my work when I left, and I put all that money into it. I was lucky enough to obtain a local grant from my council here. So it was Banstead and Reigate. A lot of local councils will have grants, so definitely check out what's going on in your local council. And I got the money to put towards building my website. So for me, it's being in marketing, the way my brand comes across is really important. So something I wasn't prepared to compromise on was the way that it comes across. So like I was saying with the model, that's really important to me. The way the website looks, how it functions, how it's being communicated, what the claims are, everything about the product that is really important. I want to make sure that people are seeing this brand and seeing it as aspirational, because I think that's such an overlooked area for mums. And I think that's also why motherhood sometimes is just not looked at as aspirational, because you just see this sea of beige and everything is frumpy and like, why, because we've had children, does that mean that we lose our personality, our right to choose a brand that's aspirational and aligns with our values? Like, why should we have to lose that? And I
It's
just
so
don't
true.
think that society values motherhood in that way, or makes it seem like a cool thing to do.
Oh
So
no, there's still the
yeah,
cool mum, mean girl thing going on, if you like, I'm a cool mum, and it's like, and it's
yeah,
not even like said in a in a great way, is it? And it's like,
yeah.
and we're still the same people. We're just like kind of probably a bit more knowledgeable than we were
Yeah,
before.
actually, it's I think it's just amazing once you have a child, and the mum community is just full of these incredible women, and you just think all the things that we're
Mm.
doing, multitasking, why is it that women are just so undervalued when they go back to work, and motherhood is seen as such a kind of, oh, you're a mum, oh, it's mumsy, like mumsy is such a negative
She
term.
won't want to work as much now because she wants to do school pickup, and it's
Yeah, it's like no one wants to, they just have to, like,
yeah.
it's you don't have a choice. And that's the thing, it's like, actually, when you're giving everything when before you have children, like the fact that you have children then go, no, I actually do have to leave at 5:30, and that
Mm.
seems a bad thing. It's like, no, that's just, you're taking back control of what you were actually meant to be doing.
And how
um
productive we can be before 5:30 or whenever we have to leave our work as well. Because I think every mum I speak to thinks they're hugely productive now compared to
Oh,
pre-children.
absolutely. When you've got that time and they're napping, you're like, right, go, let me get done. You don't end up kind of spending all this time on the stuff that's not important or filler. You really get down to the nuts and bolts of what's important to do. Um, and you just become so much more efficient.
Yeah. And I think, thank you for sharing again back to that finances about grants and things, because that's so important knowledge to share, that there are grants out there. Look at your local councils, national ones, especially ones for women as well. I'd love it if there were like more grants for mothers to get them back in, as it's a struggle in the workplace, but I can't think of any right now. But is this something then you'll have to go further and get further investment for? Have you thought about that for the future of your brand?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that because, again, in my naivety, I thought the only way you get funding is through VCs. And I actually did go through a VC program, and I just realized so quickly how it was just not the right path for me.
Oh,
Um, if I think about why I wanted to start Lesh, it was to have ownership, it was to make a difference in the world, it was, to have the ultimate say in my own brand, which is something I hadn't had before. And that's what I wanted. And as I went along this accelerator program, I really realized actually, like, it really does work for some people, but I'm so passionate and so heavily involved in what I'm doing. I don't want a VC to come in and tell me, oh, this needs to have a tech angle, or this
mm,
needs to be this way. It's not commercial enough. It's too niche. I don't want to hear those things, you
too
know.
niche. I hate that
Yeah,
with women's products.
yeah,
It's what I'm
too,
learning.
yeah, yeah. Um, so for me, like, it was just really, really important, that it's something I own. And because I went into it going, okay, well, I didn't even know bootstrapping was a term, but it's a bootstrap business. I want to own as much equity in my own business as possible. It's mine. And when I look back and see other really successful brands which have started from a similar place, like Spanx, for example, she owns that business. It's she's not got VCs involved in it. And she did that on her own. So, I think there's a lot of similar businesses like mine out there, who have managed to stay bootstrapped. And as a result of that, they're not giving up any of who they are or what their company stands for. And that's super important to me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing the benefits of bootstrapping, because I think that's really important, and also sharing the term bootstrapping, just in case there's anyone listening who's still really new to this. We all start learning this language somewhere, don't we? So yeah, we just normalize that not everyone knows this as well. And so marketing, I love the fact as well. So your marketing background, because I speak to so many women who hate marketing, or just business owners in general. I don't think it's just women, but they really struggle with this side. Do you think your background has really like given you good solid foundations for your own business on this side?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've done all the brand building from scratch before, so I know the power of having a really strong brand. I think the other thing that was really important to me, and something I've learned along the way in the beauty industry, is that anything can be copied. Anything, regardless of whatever patents and whatnot you've got in place, someone can always find a loophole and copy. So at the end of
Mm,
the day, if you've got a really strong brand, then that goes a long, long way. Your brand values, you have to live and stand by them, as well. Like, as the founder, I am part of my brand, and I
mm,
would hope that women would align with my story. And I think we're in a day and age where more and more people are willing to buy smaller female founded led brands. So that needs and must be part of my brand story and my brand identity. People just don't want to buy from faceless brands anymore. But I will say the one thing that is the most challenging, of course, is the whole social media side of things. So marketing itself and doing the branding and whatnot, sure, I've got the experience in that. But what's the most challenging, and especially whilst you take time out in maternity leave, is keeping up with social media.
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
whilst I'm, not deterred by any of the branding and marketing side, I think the most intimidating part is that social media piece, because it really can be all consuming.
Right. Said from a marketing professional herself, let's just acknowledge that social media is intimidating, hard work, and a
Yeah.
lot of work. So, especially if you're on maternity leave. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And have you, we actually met at networking once while you were pregnant. So, I'd love to also know, like, what's it been like? Because that is a challenge as well, is networking and kids, but networking, and you've got, I think I really benefited from having lockdown with a newborn. So, no one was going anywhere. So that was great for that stage of that particular element for me. How has that felt for you? Have you felt pressured to get out there when realistically you can't.
Yeah, totally. I think the biggest thing, and I think the biggest benefit when you decide to start your own business, is really networking with people. Because, I was used to these buzzy environments where, I'd work and chat and get all that, with your coworkers in the office, and that was such a motivating factor for me. Obviously, we went into lockdown and no one had that, so I could at least experience what that was like, and everyone was going along with that. But then when I decided to go it alone, you go, hang on a sec, it's just me. It's just
Yeah.
me. Oh my gosh, like I'm alone in this. And something I realized quite quickly is networking was going to be key. And if you had said to me 5 years ago that networking would become one of the most important parts of my business, I would have been like, oh God, no, absolutely not, because I hated doing anything like that when I worked in the corporate environment. But there also wasn't really that need for it. Now, 100%, you need all the help you can get. And what I've been so amazed by is just the amount of female entrepreneurs who are so willing to give their time and help other people. And I wouldn't say I'm doing anything that's necessarily that different, other than just coldly reaching out to people on LinkedIn and saying, hey, I love what you're doing. I love your business. I'm trying to do this. And I would really, really appreciate your time just to chat and understand what you've learned, or if you could give me any guidance. And I've been shocked by how many people do actually respond to that. And they come back to you and say, yeah, of course, invite you in, or, they give you help and support and contacts. And it's really that whole, like, it's that like 6 degrees of separation. You'll end up meeting someone who, and it's serendipity as well. You'll meet someone who happens to be at the same factory as you, out of all the factories in China, and you'll form these friendships with people. And it's amazing. It really is amazing what other women do for each other. I mean, there's been some fantastic organizations like Female Founders Rise, which is where I met you, that do amazing meetups, Founders Social and whatnot. So these things are just like phenomenal and really, really important. But the big challenge is, being able to do it with a baby. And I think when I've voiced these concerns, so many women are like, whatever, just do it. And you're like, yeah, I should. But then for me at least, I get down to the time and I just think, oh no, I'm gonna have to go into London in rush hour with a baby. And I've had it before where I've gotten stuck on the tube and the people behind me couldn't get off the tube because my baby got stuck in between the two carriages at the
Oh
end.
no.
So I've got like quite a big fear of going into London with a baby. But I haven't been able to do it so much. But something that I do really need to do, and what I did early days, was just that, cold reaching out on LinkedIn and chatting to people, because it really does build your network. You never know who's on what WhatsApp group or is part of something else or knows about some fun that's going on. And really kind of the most positive wins I've had have been through networking.
That is such good advice, because especially, and also because we've got the privilege of being able to get into London and things like that. And we live somewhere with so many founders, and not everyone has that. So whether it's a baby or literally your location, it's like, that's such like practical advice of like, just reach out to people. Because I mean, maybe 5 out of 10 won't respond, maybe 5 will, and that's it. It's the ones that do respond that are the ones that are going to build your network. And then, like you said, you always find out you've got someone else in common and things like that, and you start to build your own network even if you can't get to others. So thank you so much for that advice. So, and Kat, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've really given some excellent advice on, well, sharing your story firstly, but advice on how to actually get started with your brand. And is there anything else you can share about Lesh and the launch and what's next for you?
Yeah, for sure. So the wait list is now live.
Exciting.
So the website is www.wearelesh.com. So I'm just in the midst of finalizing all the sizing, and then I'll be putting in the full order, and we'll be having product come hopefully by the end of the year, if not early next year. But I'm very, very excited to receive the final product and get the brand out there. But it's coming very, very soon.
Oh, fantastic. Well, no, thank you, Kat. And everyone head over to Lesh's website, buy them for your friends if you're not expecting another baby. And I really look forward to having you on again in the future to see your growth and what products you'll be working on next.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Kat.